We've just finished a brilliant discussion around the future of consumer responsibility. We spoke about getting the basics right, using Gen AI, that brand building is harder, and how brands and consumers continue to collaborate in a much more responsible way. I'm Bhavesh, Vice President of Brand and Marketing at Frog, part of Capgemini Invent. Hi guys, thanks for joining. Can we start by both of you introducing yourselves? Matt?
I'm Matt Gratze, previously worked with many brands that you'd recognise: Halfords, Mothercare and Summers, Signet Jewelers UK, which is Ernest Jones, H. Samuel, on the high street today, all in the digital space.
Thank you, Matt. And Sharon?
Yep, so I'm a managing partner at 23Red. We're a creative advertising agency that's very purpose-driven. We do lots of work in the public sector, but also increasingly with commercial clients too. And we're on a mission to change behaviour for the better for people, better for society and better for the planet. We do lots of work that helps consumers change their behaviour or adopt new behaviours. So we've got a long history of working on iconic behaviour change campaigns like Change for Life, helping consumers adopt healthier eating habits, and even like NHS blood and transplant, encouraging people to give blood, because every time someone gives blood, they can save up to 3 lives. So really purpose-led work.
Brilliant. And that's a really nice segue into the topic today. So as you both know, for many years, brands have been talking about being consumer-centric, being consumer-first, meeting the customer's need unconditionally. And today, I think brands need to go beyond that. And consumer responsibility, I think, is a good headline for that, where how do we meet their need and be there for them beyond the product, beyond the service, but thinking about them holistically, but also thinking about the planet, thinking about the purpose. So I'd love to know what your view is on consumer responsibility to start with, and then talk a little bit about the kind of work you're doing in that space. Sharon, if we start with you.
Yeah, so I think my view in terms of brands' responsibility to consumers, I think brands more than ever really need to understand the context of consumers' lives. So, we're in a cost of living crisis, inflation is bonkers, we're in a recession. And I think brands need to understand that. And although a lot of brands do a lot of market research, so beauty brands are obsessed about knowing consumers' beauty regimes, but actually you've got to go beyond that. You've got to think about how the cost of living crisis is affecting them, what their worries are, how they're adopting their shopping behaviours as a result. I think there's some brands that are responding really well to that. So think about Aldi. They've got an award-winning beauty range, Lacura. They've got Hotel Collection, which is their home fragrances and candles. Really good products, affordable, but actually they look really premium because they've taken the time to invest in their packaging. So as a consumer, you don't feel that you're trading down. So I think brands just being mindful of the reality of consumers' lives is just incredibly important.
Brilliant, thank you. Matt, what's your view?
I 100% agree with that, but a lot of brands are businesses as well, and there's a fine line. And when we're in the cost of living crisis, customers aren't spending as much, margins are suppressed. So we do have to get to we have to think about businesses do need to make money to survive, but at the same time, I do feel that where a brand is in a position of authority, in a position of power, it has a responsibility to the consumer. And it has a responsibility to the environment that it's operating in, and where it can, I often think 100% that they should be passing on those benefits, passing on the know-how to the consumer in a responsible way. We've seen it time and time again. I always look back at what Jamie Oliver did for school dinners, right? He was in a power at the time. He was a brand himself, and in a position of trust and authenticity, and he forced change for the good, and not everyone liked it at the time because it was upsetting margins, it was upsetting businesses, but there was some enforced legislation put through off of what him and his brand could achieve. So I think it's great to see brands go the extra mile, but you do have to be cognizant of the fact that they've still got to make profit, because we're seeing more and more brands going out of business at the same time.
I don't think that it needs to be mutually exclusive, as in, that the whole thing about sustainability, I don't think the responsibility should just be on consumers alone to make those greener choices, because sometimes those greener choices are more premium, and consumers just can't afford to be more eco-friendly. So I think, where brands and retailers are getting it right. So, for instance, in the fashion area, so brands who are basically advising their customers about how to wear an item of clothing in lots of different styles so they get more wear out of it. Those that are all, offering repair and alteration services, I think are really good. And to get back to my favourite subject of Love Island, I think the sponsorship by eBay was just a stroke of genius, because they've managed to position second-hand clothing as pre-loved, and immediately the desirability goes up. And they've seen great business results as a result of that.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting, both of those points, because I think there is the commercial angle for sure. We can't miss that. And I see there are brands that are not even getting the basics right. So the things that really bugbear me is lots of data about me, yet you still serve me content that isn't right for me. I still get grocers sending me offers on fish and meat, and I've never ordered fish and meat in my life because I'm vegetarian. I really hate when I get an email from a brand, but it's a no reply email. So you have the right to email me, but I don't have the right to email you without having to Google and search all sorts of stuff before I can email you back. So for me, that's pretty poor basics. Then if we go to the other extreme, which is if you make the statement of, I'm consumer responsible, I will serve you and meet your need unconditionally, I will always put you first. That then means, and I know there's a commercial implication, that then means that I'm meeting your need and I'm going to be there for you, whatever happens. And I had a brilliant experience with a digital human that was AI powered, where we asked that digital human who was AI powered to make a product recommendation for a sensitive shampoo that was vegan. And they made 3 brand recommendations. And it was plugged into the US market, and it could see kind of the neighborhood availability. So we were working with a certain brand, and it made a product recommendation for a competitor brand. So the far extreme is you're meeting that consumer's need in that instance by recommending a competitor brand because it's available at that moment in time, it's convenient for the consumer. So for me, that's the far extreme of where brands could go. So I'd love to get both of your views on how unconditional should brands be, therefore recommending competitor products, delivering competitor products. Do you think we'll ever get there, Matt?
In certain aspects, yes. But in other aspects, absolutely not. So yeah, without sounding like I'm sitting on the fence, but it's funny because you go back 30, 40 years, right? If you were on a high street that's buzzing and you popped into your local butcher's and you said, look, can I have a jar of jam? And he said, oh, I don't sell jam, but if you go a few doors down, there'll be some jam in Bob's shop around the corner, right? It's very similar. It's very similar, but in a digital world. But what the butcher's done is gain trust with that customer, right? Probably gained a bit more respect, a bit more transparency, and opened up a better relationship. And again, take that into a digital world. Brands need to drive trust, because when you look at the younger demographic coming through, we all hear that brand loyalty isn't as strong as it was from an older demographic. So how do you build that trust and build that loyalty and repeat purchase? Because again, the commercialization of it is, I want to get to second purchase, third purchase, fourth purchase, not just focus on that singular purchase. So I get the point of building trust. Would you go as far as to say, let's recommend a competitor's product? It's a seesaw effect. It depends on who your brand is, who your product is, and how you want customers to respond to you. I think if you can answer those 3 questions, then you'd work out whether you'd be all over allowing your products to be offered by other people, etc., or protect your brand by keeping control of it and control of that customer experience yourself.
I get your view on the recommendation maybe being too far, but what about we're all connected, all the data's connected. Would you be willing to, or would brands be willing to share their data with competitors around, you're going to a certain street to deliver competitor A's product anyway, and competitor B is also delivering to that street? Would it be the right behavior change? Going back to your point, Sharon, around why not consolidate those deliveries? Why do we need to run, I'm sure we all experience 20, 30 delivery drivers a day running up and down our streets, delivering one parcel. is that an opportunity to better partner in a way that maybe is non-competitive because the transaction's already happened?
I think what you're picking up on is change happening maybe at a sector or industry level. So obviously a lot of brands are now changing how they interact with their customers. E-commerce has just gone through the roof. The fact that you can just be scrolling through your social feed and make a purchase in that without interrupting your browsing experience is amazing. But with that, I think comes a lot of security and safety issues. We do a lot of work with the Competitions Market Authority and actually educating the public on misleading online practices. So things like fake reviews and hidden subscription charges, or any hidden charges really. And I think what's interesting, that if as a brand you're wanting to go the e-commerce route, then I think you've got a duty of care with the consumers. So you need to help them with that experience. So actually point them to verified reviews. Even if not all the reviews are great, at least you're then empowering the consumer to make an informed choice. So I think there are things like that can help. So at an industry level where you've got brands working together, because at the end of the day, if you make it safer for one customer, you make it safer for all customers, you're all benefiting.
And Sharon, why do you think brands are struggling with some of the basics then, in terms of, we get content that's not relevant for us, or it's hard to contact customer service teams, the experience is pretty broken? Why is that?
So I think it's data wagging the dog. And in some ways, I think marketeers are so obsessed with data points, they're not actually looking beyond that to just really understand consumer behaviour and, take into account everything else that is happening in a consumer's lives. And actually, just because someone has clicked an ad once doesn't mean that they haven't bought it, so stop chasing them around, or actually that they're interested, so serve them something else, and come back to that original product a bit later down the line. I mean, I think it's really interesting, like the power of social media, because there have been so many amazing brands that have started life out without bricks and mortar and without actually investing in a brand, in some ways building up trust with a consumer through appearing in their social feeds. But I always remember that someone said the quote, it's like, I tweet about your brand not because I love your brand, it's because I love my friends. So I think building that kind of trust with consumers is really important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The recommendation, the influencer type mentality, because you're recommending personally, it's not the brand pushing it. You're much more likely to build a relationship up with that brand when you've been recommended it or influenced by it. And it goes a long way, right? But going back to customer experience, the worst thing from an influencer or a friend's perspective is if the experience isn't there, you're not just damaging the trust with the relationship between the brand and the customer, but the person that recommended you or the influencer that pushed you, their reputation's at stake. So brands do need to get or companies, retailers, brands need to get the experience right, because and the experience continues to evolve. So there's always the element of catch up. But the minute you look at the final mile, if it doesn't arrive when you said it was going to arrive, or if I'm served irrelevant content when I've given you all of my details, these certain aspects are key to building trust. And for me, they're just the hygiene factors from a consumer experience perspective that brands need to get right to build trust. If I said to you it's going to come in recyclable packaging and it doesn't, then I'm not going to shop with you again, right?
So what is it then? Because it feels like we are in a data overload. There is more than enough information available for these experiences not to happen. So is it that brands are not being responsible with the data that they have, or is it, like you said, Sharon, that we're in a data overload and we haven't got the time or the power then to actually focus on the action, which is the most important thing?
No one goes to work saying, I'm really going to ruin a customer's day today. I'm really going to deliver a terrible experience, because everyone's got the right ambitions. Everyone wants to deliver the best customer experience possible. I think firstly, there'll be, a lot with the legacy retailers, with some that are a bit more traditional, there'll be systemic problems. Trying to get data from one side of the fence into impacting a journey on the other side of the fence can be very difficult, very expensive. And you've got to jump through all the different guidelines and make sure that the customer data is safe and secure and used in the right way with consent. If the systems aren't set up for that, or you don't have that flow of information, it becomes very tricky to be able to influence, whether it's sent out from the DC and, you've got someone working with a customer database. The two aren't naturally joined, right? So it's always a challenge and a costly challenge to try and join that data to be able to use it in the correct way. The second thing is, I think, is when data has been put into businesses, it's been put in with a singular or maybe 2 or 3 purposes in mind. And that would have been done 5 or 6 years ago. Now you've got about 10 or 20 things you want to extrapolate out of that data, but it's very hard to interpret it in the way you want it to because it's been structured in the way that it was put when it was first put in 5 years ago. So you've got to try and restructure that data, which is timely and costs a lot of money. So it's great to have all this rich data, but what's the challenge sometimes is being able to leverage that rich data in the right place or the right forum. But then what you can find is then you get very singular focuses on trying to leverage that data, and you put a lot of time and effort into leveraging that data, and you can forget the basics. You've put your resource and your time and money into that data, but you've not been talking to your logistics partners, or the packaging looks a bit tired now, it needs a bit updating, and you're kind of forgetting the basics that were there from a customer experience perspective that should have been there all along. And it is a challenge because, again, profits are squeezed, resources are lighter, the amount of investment going around is not as strong as it was 5-6 years ago. So they're the challenges. Do you go for relevant data? Sometimes it's a choice versus fixing some of the basics in the customer journey.
It's really interesting, and I've seen some brands really kind of go to another level of being really smart with the data that they have. So I'd love to get your views on examples of them. Of those, the ones I saw was a grocer working with a bank on a bank card provider on vulnerable customers. And this was born out of the back of COVID, and the grocer kind of realized that there's their responsibility to their consumers is, look, at the end of the day, whatever happens, unconditionally, there has to be food on the table. So they wanted to make sure that they, as a brand, were able to do that beyond food banks, and even food banks were really, really stretched. So they worked with this bank provider on a very under-the-radar, non-marketed initiative around looking at those that wouldn't have enough money by the end of the week to provide groceries. And we're able to put a proposition in front of these to say, it's okay, you can come, old-fashioned, like you said, Matt, I'll give you a credit note just to make sure there's grocery on the end of the table. And I thought that was a brilliant example of focusing on vulnerable customers, brands showing responsibility, not marketing it either. It was very, very under the radar. And I'd love to see more brands doing this and more brands partnering on doing this. Have you guys got any examples of brands you've seen recently that have gone the extra mile to show this?
Yeah, I've probably got a couple of examples. I think probably what I'm picking up on is when you guys are talking about data, actually, I think the more important thing is insight, and applying that insight right. So one example, they're two very different examples, is Who Gives a Crap toilet roll. So, very eco-friendly, bamboo made. They donate 50% of their profits to helping organisations with provide clean water and toilets to those who need. Absolutely brilliant. But actually, it's the packaging that the toilet roll comes in. They were observing the paper that actually it's such beautiful wrapping that people are using it for gift wrapping. So they bring out a Christmas edition with an artist, I think his name's Ashley, running like really lovely designs. So not only does toilet roll, who can believe it, it's looking good, you're actually seeing it, people wrapping their Christmas gifts with it and posting it, and there's blogs being written about it, and there's an article in Good Housekeeping. It's just amazing, and that's because they're just following the behaviour, what their customers are doing, and then providing more of that good experience. So that's one. And then the other example is actually the work that 23Red are doing with NHS, and it's helping people spot the early signs of cancer, which obviously is a very sort of hard thing to do. It's a hard education and awareness job. People don't want to think about it. but actually it's a partnership with Morrison's and changing the clothing label to now a self-care label. So it's a QR code in which you scan, and you can basically look for early symptoms, and it's appearing like in underwear. So bras to help women spot early signs of breast cancer, labels in boxer shorts to help men spot early signs of cancer. So, initiatives like that where you think, okay, they've applied insight and they've come up with a really good solution.
I think that's a marvellous example. And that is where I think certain companies, brands, the big US, whether it's Apple or Microsoft or whatever, that's where I think, and I know they have their charitable foundations, but how do we leverage technology to help solve some of the illnesses and diseases across the world? And I think that some of the brands that go above and beyond to do that are just awesome. You always get your smart watches and your smartphones that are picking up your heartbeats and your heart rates and all the medical technology in there. How do we start building that out to monitor more appropriately? I don't know. Can it check for signs of cancer with those sort of things? And there's so much money within those brands that could really do something with it. I think that's a different can of worms, right?
You've both provoked a lot of follow-up questions, so I'll go through them one by one. So one is on the green point. Over years, we've been collecting lots of consumer data. We need it to drive more personalization, relevance, meet their need better. But the tension point now is that the cost of doing that is not very green. It goes against kind of some of the carbon neutral targets that brands have set. So how do you ensure you don't lose the consumer personalization element, but also balance the carbon neutrality?
It's a good question. It's a tough question. A lot of it comes down to the consumer intent. If you're thinking it from a brand perspective, what's the intent of that consumer? Is it to buy products that's wrapped around a green eco wrapper? Then great. If that's the intent of that customer, then let's make sure that we can be relevant with explaining the green credentials, the carbon neutrality of the products and the offering, etc. Sometimes the consumer intent is to just go from A to B as quickly as possible, take payment and get out of there. They've only got 2 minutes, right? So how can you make sure that the journey, you're leveraging your data? How do you make sure that your journey is leveraging that level of intent? So because we always hear on a website, right? You're looking at 2, 3, 4% conversion rates. Therefore, you've got 95, 96% of customers that aren't converting. So what are they looking for? How do you service them with the relevant information, the relevant knowledge? They might be researching, they might be browsing, they might be recommending for a friend, they might be, all sorts of different things. So how do you leverage that data accordingly based on the level of intent from the customer? We're quite fortunate to be working with companies that can now start doing that for us and really turbocharge, get us to those different levels of segments, different levels of intent, that allows us to be able to service the right message to the customer. And a lot of customers will be looking for the green, the carbon neutral type message or the offering through the funnel. But you've got to deliver it at the right moment at the right time to be able to capture that level of desirability on the customer. I think that's where you really need to leverage the data to be able to surface it, because as much as it's a bit, I often say that and I don't want to jump on the other foot. That I don't want to sound like I'm a diesel champion or anything like that. But it's like going to the doctors, and when a doctor says how many units of alcohol do you drink a week, right? You say 2 or 3, and you're probably pushing the truth. But when customers, when you ask them how much is sustainability, how much is carbon neutrality important to the products that you purchase, they're going, of course, it's massively important. 90% of customers would say absolutely. Why wouldn't you, right? But then when you say, but would you pay 20p extra or a couple of quid extra? All of a sudden, I think I'll just buy what I always bought at the price I always bought it. So we have to bear in mind that customers will always say it, but what they say and do are two different things. And data and insight will tell you the truth, whereas customer opinion can cloud and muddy the waters. Carbon neutrality is very important to the planet that we live in and for the consumers' children and their children, etc. So we have to be mindful of that. But at the same time, we have to be able to deliver what the customer actually wants.
Yeah.
It's a great point.
I think on that, just to build on that a little bit more, I think it's I think for brands to contextualize sustainability for consumers is really important. So although they might say, yeah, they want to purchase from brands that are got the best eco credentials, but the reality is they can't always afford to make those purchases or make those choices. But I think brands giving consumers a helping hand, so putting in care labels that actually you could wash this item in clothing in a cold wash and it will still be perfect. Advising consumers to put a load of washing on but put it in a laundry bag so it will catch any microfibers. So things like that just help nudge the consumer on so that they are more educated, more aware, but not in a way that kind of goes, oh, this problem is too big for me to solve on my own.
That's a great point, Sharon. And just to kind of go deeper on that, you've done a lot of work in behaviour change, and I think a lot of it is around education. We're in a world of constantly conflicting messages. So can you give us a couple of examples of how you've put consumer need first and driven a behaviour change for the better? And how did you go about doing that using insights, using empathy and other tools?
Yeah. So I think probably a good example is Sport England's This Girl Can. So, there's a gender gap in exercise with over 2 million fewer women than men exercising. And Sport England invest a lot of money in sporting infrastructure, but the women weren't coming. I remember the clients saying at the time, we've done loads and loads of insight work. There's loads of data. We think the answer's there. We don't need any more data, which I think was refreshing to hear. But it's like we can't get to the right answer. And it was actually digging through all that insight and we realised, well, actually, there's hundreds and hundreds of reasons why women and girls aren't engaging in exercise. They don't feel good enough. They're really self-conscious in what they're wearing. They feel that they have to put the priorities of their children or their studies or their job first. Or they worry that they're just going to be a bit rubbish. So actually what was linking it all together was this fear of judgment. So actually that gave us a very clear role for the campaign, which is you've got to smash through women's fear of judgment to get them to exercise. So This Girl Can was born and it's been amazing. But the reality is there's loads of practical reasons why women still can't exercise. Not available childcare. The default seems to be the gym, and that can be expensive. The classes are at inconvenient times. And actually, leisure wear still sometimes has a price premium. So I think the work that 23 Red have been doing in the partnership space is really interesting. So they did a partnership with Tesco and launched an everyday leisure wear range for women of all shapes and sizes. And they've even got a range for daughters too, to encourage mothers to exercise with their daughters, which is brilliant. They've been doing work around raising awareness that actually when the clocks go back, suddenly the opportunity for women to exercise outdoors and feel safe significantly reduces when we get darker mornings and it's darker earlier in the evenings. So helping to raise awareness by saying we've got to lift the curfew, we've got to provide women with alternative safe spaces. So I think that's a really good example of how using insight you can get to the right behaviour change that has a positive outcome.
Brilliant example. No, thank you, Sharon. And just going back, Matt, to a point you made around loyalty, we as Frog have been working with brands for many years on kind of loyalty programs and their evolution. And I think if we all look back to our younger days, there was less brands, there was less supply, and therefore we went to the same places to meet our needs, and we would probably compromise if we were let down on the odd occasion. Whereas now there's a lot more supply, there's a lot more choices, there's a lot more options. So how do brands remain loyal or ensure their consumers stay loyal to them when there is so much choice around? What can they do to differentiate themselves further?
If I knew the exact answer to that, I'd be quite rich, I think. It's a challenge because you never know what's going through the consumer's mindset, right? There is more choice than ever. There's more options and avenues to buy. You buy now, pay later, and everything else. So there's always a way to buy. I think, as we've spoken already, you have to look at that customer journey, and straight away, if whether it's a 15-step, a 20 touch point journey of research, buy, receive the goods, return the goods, etc. You can get put off if just one of those little things is out of shape, right? And then you can move someone else, and not even your experience, your friend's experience, or your friend's experience, because word of mouth is still one of those powerful methods that brands have. So I think the customer journey, the customer experience needs to be spot on. Where you're talking and communicating to that customer, that's changing, right? So 10 years ago, we'd all be sitting there waiting for the Christmas ads, and TV is the mainstream way for attracting desirability, which would then in turn lead to loyalty, because the brand I always shop with have just come out of a lovely TV ad, and that's my brand, great. But again, the demographics with the disposable income at the moment, are they watching TV ads? With Netflix and Apple and everything else, you don't have many ads. So you've got to find new ways of keeping in touch with your demographics, whether that's now TikTok and Snapchat, or what was Facebook and Instagram, or direct mailings. Those are things we used to get. They're they're a great way to get back in front of the customer, but it comes back down to relevancy. And back down to your other point, if a brand's talking to me out of context or irrelevantly, it's just noise. It's wastage from the brand as well, right? They're wasting their budgets, they're wasting their work, their productivity. So how do they become more relevant? And I think relevancy will become the key to brand loyalty. I'd say relevancy, but also authenticity. What we loved and what we saw quite well, and I've read other case studies on it, is the from a TikTok perspective, which is a platform that's attracting some of the younger generations and getting some great traction. When you've got glossy, high definition TV ad type material, it's not working on TikTok. It needs to be from a shopper's point of view or an influencer's point of view, and it needs to be authentic, and it needs to show exactly what the customer would see in when they walk into a normal store, not the exhibition store, or they walk into meet a normal store colleague, not an actor, right? And I think that authenticity alongside relevancy will engage with customers a lot more, therefore driving brand loyalty.
Nice. And Sharon, if you put your consumer hat on, what makes you loyal to a brand? What kind of pulls one brand on top of another brand?
Well, I think for a start, a brand not assuming I'm loyal, because I think, some ridiculous stat of 47% of consumers are shopping around. So don't assume I'm going to stick with you would be my first sort of piece of advice. And then just making sure, you are where I am. I mean, TikTok and YouTube are now brilliant sources for product demos. Don't expect me to come to your website and spend my precious time searching and doing my research on your website. You need to come where I am. So I think it is about going with the flow of consumers' lives, appearing in the channels that they are using. Don't expect me to come and find you, because chances are I'm not going to bother. And it was interesting, the discussion we were having about the role of the high street. And the fact, a lot of high streets are now seeing lots of empty spaces, but that should be huge opportunity for brands to actually pop up there, interact with their consumers, get their consumers close to their products. In this world of e-commerce, I think experiences like that are really critical and essential for building loyalty.
And that's a really good point, Sharon, on how consumer responsibility becomes even harder. Because if you're managing your consumer in your physical space and your digital space, but now you've got to think about them on all of these social places or all of these marketplaces, it gets harder to know enough about them to maybe serve them better. So Matt, how do we then really be personal for them?
It's about understanding your data again. I know that don't want the conversation to keep going back to the data, but understanding all the different touch points, all the different channels,
But if they are on TikTok or Instagram, how would you even know and collate that? Like how would that information come back to you? Is that a void in the journey?
Well, no, this is where you need to work with great media partners and understand audience demographics. We always have this thing of looky-like audiences, right? So if we generally know the kind of guys that are shopping with us, let's go and find all the guys that look just like them, and then we can market to them, or working with other partners. So working with people that do have that data, whether it be the banks, the building societies, the internet providers, how you can work with them to understand where those browser patterns are, and then how you can target accordingly, and target effectively to find customers in that space. I always remember, but back to our Mothercare days, we always knew we were very lucky because it's a very linear life cycle. You kind of know when if a customer's pregnant, you kind of know what the next 9 months are going to deliver, and then what happens after the next 9 months, right? So science has blessed us with that pattern. So we could always work out where to target customers with certain messages along that kind of timeline. Down to the weeks, days, based on data. And obviously, if it applies to a cohort of customers, you'd go and find another cohort of customers that look just like that, and you can find out how to target them with those sorts of messaging. But going back, using the Mothercare example, we had a great loyalty mechanism, because we had trust and authority in the market. Right, Mothercare was a rite of passage, right? So for first-time mums, we spoke about it earlier. Go to Mothercare was a rite of passage to go get your tick list and walk around with your mum and buy all the bits and pieces. And we set up a great forum there called the 2 a.m. Club. And what we found was that, if you've got a young baby, or you've been woken up through the night because you're heavily pregnant and you can't sleep very well, 2 o'clock in the morning was a key moment in time where, as a parent, where your partner could be asleep or not around or whatever, it can be a very lonely place. Right, very lonely place. So we set up a private club on social media that allowed mums and expectant mums to be able to converse with other mums and expectant mums in a safe environment, hosted by an authority voice in the industry. We weren't pushing products at all. We were just hosting and facilitating the conversation. The kind of insight we got from mums, the kind of loyalty and the trust we got from mums was invaluable. Right, you could do all the surveys you want in the world, and you wouldn't be able to get this authentic, transparent communication back. And that was just a great way of being right place, right time. Great idea from the guys that developed it, but being able to facilitate for them. And I think that's a great example of where brands can build trust, build loyalty, because you're not pushing anything. You're just facilitating and you're helping what can be quite a lonely time for mothers.
That's a brilliant example, isn't it? It's kind of completely unconditional. I'm sure they were talking about competitive products as well, but they'll remember Mothercare in the longer term. So I've stayed off talking about the generative AI topic until now, but now's the time we talk about it. So we kind of, as Capgemini, released some research at the start of the year on. We looked at the CMOs. What's the kind of the changing landscape of chief marketing officers, chief customer officers? What's their view on generative AI? How much of it is it a priority and how much of it is a concern? The bulk of them said that they are taking a serious responsibility to driving the generative AI roadmap into their business, which is brilliant. They also spoke about the fact that it is a very important investment, and already over 60% of tech budget has also been put into it as well. One thing that I want to delve into with both of you is the two concerns that were raised were around ethics and skills gap. So if we think about generative AI, which is almost now this part of the ecosystem that's going to drive recommendations, share insights, provide data, provide contextualized recommendations, and that could be done for our consumers engaging with your brand. It could be done for your brand engaging with those consumers. What are your views on the ethical controls that might risk and how that might be mitigated?
I think for me, if they're expecting their consumers to interact with them in that way, to really get the reasoning solid, because if it's simply just about, it's just cost efficient, it's time efficient, that's not how the consumer is looking at it. I think the best examples of consumers using AI is when they don't even realise they're using it. Then you know it's working. I think 47% of UK consumers are concerned about the lack of interaction with humans as a result of AI, but it's particularly in the context of customer service and an emergency response. So as a brand, I think, right, okay, if I know that actually if something goes wrong with a product, a customer's going to want to get hold of someone ASAP, let them have that mechanism to be able to speak to a person, or at least just make sure that the interaction, you're demonstrating that there's some empathy there, that there is humans who have informed the technology. For me, that is really key. It's just ensuring that if we want consumers to go on this journey with us as a brand, and actually it's going to be good for them from an experience point of view, then make sure you've done your homework.
You raise a really good point, Sharon, actually, because there's, and Matt, you'll relate to this as well, so many companies made chatbots, and I've had some horrendous chatbot experiences where it was, trained on very basic data sets. And I know I'm talking to a machine, even though she's called Sandra. So I had an experience with my utilities provider on, you've sent me completely the wrong bill, there's no contact number, obviously it's a no reply email address, and it's like, it's having a conversation with me, but it's only trained on 3 things and then it never went anywhere. Whereas now that same utilities company is using generative AI and the experience is a lot better. I know that because we're working with them on it. So I've seen the before and I've seen the after. However, many customers who have had that interaction before are now kind of not wanting to re-engage with it and won't even entertain it. So how do you kind of, as a slight kind of deflection, how do you then ensure that, one, consumers do feel like this is an enhancement of the experience, your data is still protected, we are still putting you first, and it should be pretty seamless, right? They shouldn't really even know that it's AI or Gen AI or automated. It should just be me serving you in the best possible way, in a way that allows me to give you the best products and service at the most optimal price. So Matt, how are you kind of balancing the explosion of Gen AI within your works, please?
I think it's positive, right? And I'll set my neck on the line and say I think it's definitely a good movement. I also think it's not new, right? I mean, we've got to get away from that fact that machine learning, what it was branded before, has been around for a while. The recommendations that you see on a website, other products you may like, things like that, they've been there for quite some time, and they're algorithm based, and all I think the evolution into machine learning and AI is doing, they're really narrowing down on the precision side of it, which I think is a good thing, because you're just evolving the experience. The chatbot example, calling up the old call centres, whether it's utilities or TV related or broadband related, etc., it can only be a good thing, right? No one wants to sit on a line talking to a robot for 10, 15 minutes. You want to be pointed to the right person as quickly as possible. And the evolution in machine learning and AI can help do that a lot quicker than previously. From a customer perspective, great. I mean, there has to be legislation and security and rules around how companies leverage and use that data. And I think that's clear. And the more data that companies are holding on individuals, the more worrying that can be for certain people. But if it's used in the right way, and companies do have to make sure they utilize it in the right way, then I think it's a force for good. Because we can be more productive with our time when we're working in behind the scenes, the things that customers don't see. We can be a lot more productive with our time, which allows us to spend more time and resource focusing on the things that the customers do see. 10 years ago, we were singular channeled, right? And then there's the whole omni-channel element came out. Now what we're seeing through the evolution of AI and being able to access and leverage these tools, it becomes the unified channels, where every touch point can talk to one another, whether it's TikTok to stores, whether it's booking an appointment to returning an item. All this data, rather than sitting in different silos, they can now all be joined together quite seamlessly with the right investment and the right technology to deliver that enhanced, unified customer experience.
Yeah, no, I think there's some really good points there, Matt. And I think what I've seen is that we're almost bucketing kind of Gen AI use cases into 3 buckets, which is, one is as a growth driver, The second one is around the employee experience. And the third one is around kind of how can it help us take cost out to help free up, like you said, Matt, the resources to serve our consumers better. And I've seen the biggest traction in the cost out and in the employee experience. So I've been playing with some tools around kind of, helping me turn my Word document into a PowerPoint, or helping me kind of capture my Teams minutes, and some of the time out that then takes, that allows us to focus on the consumer end of it, which is brilliant. And my favorite quote, just to kind of leave you on for the Gen AI question, was, people have obviously had concerns, will Gen AI take my job? And the best saying I had a few weeks ago was, Gen AI won't take your job. People who know how to get the best out of Gen AI probably will. And that really, really resonated. And I've told obviously 100 people this, and they've all nodded like you two are. So that's great. I need to thank the person that shared that comment with me. But I think that's kind of, as you said, Mike, it needs to be integrated versus being standalone, which is what we did with digital. And I think we need to think beyond it's going to do everything for us into how it improves everything we do.
You came up, Sharon, with a great example around This Girl Can. 10 years ago, catwalk models were tall, skinny and slim, and they were the aspirational, right? We don't have to take one photo shoot anymore. Your experience on a website, Sharon, your experience, Bhavesh, on a website would be different to my experience. And the models that I'm seeing and the products that I'm seeing them wear could be more modelled to me, more modelled to you, more modelled to you. And that's where the power of AI can be harnessed for good. Rather than giving young consumers out there a complex about how they're looking, this is where AI can be used for good, because you can develop what they should be seeing, and every journey could be different off the base of how we evolve AI for good.
Totally agree. I think, the default should be, when a brand is thinking about AI, is look at their vulnerable customers first. And if it's helping them, then that's a good thing, because then it will help everyone else. And just to build on Matt's point, which is brilliant, is like, even though women come in all different shapes and sizes, chances are you'll go to a lot of websites and you see still the standard model. It's getting better. But even if I could see myself wearing different clothes, or anyone else, it's not just about different models. It's like, how can Gen I put me in those clothes so that I know that, that's going to suit me. So I'm going to make a valuable purchase with, the little money I have to spend on clothing.
Really nice examples. So moving us on to a provocative topic that we've also touched upon. So we as Frog, at the end of last year, ran a session where we really provoked the role of marketing and customer functions in the future. We kind of made the statement to say, we need to encourage our consumers to buy less frequently, waste less. And that obviously absolutely collides with a lot of the commercial KPIs, Matt, you would be faced with, or kind of, the metric, Sharon, that you might be faced with. So in a world where we know it's the right thing to do to get people to buy less, waste less, and shop less often, how do we balance that with the need that we as brands are being asked to sell more and grow and gain more market share?
Sometimes it's not just about selling products, the services angle. Okay, how do you leverage your infrastructure, your know-how, your capabilities to repair products? All right, and you can still charge for that, right? You can still make your money from that, but it delivers less waste. How can brands and companies start pivoting and into more of a service-led or repair-led type of business model, and attach that to their mainstream model as almost a separate source of profit, sales and profits and customer retention, rather than just always doing what they've been there to do and just buy and sell products. Timpson's, the guys that you see doing shoes, key locking and things like that. They were offering stuff for free, wasn't it, for people that were looking for work. You could go and get your suit dry cleaned. Again, they're looking at ways. How do suit makers buddy up with Timpsons? I don't know. There's probably partnerships and things that can come from that. I think it comes from, how do you pivot from being in a sole retail environment, selling products, to start thinking about services and repairs as another way of generating cash and income.
Yeah, I agree. It shouldn't just be about volume of sales. I think 67% of UK consumers that have bought furniture in the last 12 months have deliberately bought more expensive furniture because they want it to last longer. So consumers are already moving in that direction. So brands need to follow. And I think if you're getting, as a consumer, better value, and that brand is being seem to help you get more value out of that product, then there will be other purchases further down the line. I think we shouldn't be pushing to sell more products to consumers if they don't need it. And it, it's a different way of looking at it. But yeah, you've got to be creative about what other revenue streams you can add on that are providing real value, and you will still get that loyalty.
And Matt spoke about some of them in terms of new business models or new service models. And Sharon, you've done a lot of work in kind of brand partnerships. So where do you think there's more opportunity to kind of get brands to maybe work together more to drive kind of positive outcomes and mutual growth for those consumer sets?
Yeah, I think a lot of the work that 23 Red do is getting brands together who have a similar outlook in terms of want to help consumers, whether that's better food choices. So going back to Change for Life, 23 Red designed a Good Choices badge, which was just a really simple sticker that goes on food that are just healthier for you. So from a consumer's perspective, when they're doing their supermarket shop, they're probably going to buy from lots of different brands that have that little sticker on. So all those brands are benefiting from that initiative. So I think more things like that will help consumers, but also will ensure those brands remain front of mind.
So I'm going to leave you with one more question each. Brace yourselves. If you both had a magic wand, you can limit this to the industry or to kind of, the clients that you're working on, and we could do one thing, we could force one change that drove more responsibility towards the consumer. What would that be? And I'm willing to kick us off while you both think about it. So for me, I absolutely want to fix the basics. I want there to be no reason why I'm ever given anything of kind of, irrelevance to me. And I know it's hard, but even things like kind of, being sent Mother's Day gift ideas, the week after your mum's passed away, or kind of being served meat ads when I've never ordered meat in my life. And the most frustrating is never being able to reply back to an email that a brand has emailed me on. For me, those are non-negotiable, and brands have to fix that. That's unacceptable in the modern day, where we have all of this insights, data, modern technology that prevents those things from happening. So for me, it's just that base layer would be a big improvement.
Any kind of failing in that customer journey map, any kind of failing at all, is a negative experience. So having a magic wand, and it sounds simple, making sure that the product you're selling them is actually in stock and you're not going to cancel it, or looking at the reviews to make sure we're not selling them something that is, customers are feeding back on and saying, actually, there's a problem with that. All the way to the point is, if I say it's going to be delivered on Monday at 10 o'clock, it turns up at Monday at 10 o'clock, and it's not thrown over the back fence, and it's actually handed to you like the experience says it's going to be. I think just ironing out those, and they sound like they've been problems for a while, and still retailers struggle with them. Get that right, and everything else falls into place, because your customers will shop with you again. They will tell their friends that there's no problems, because problems are amplified 10 times versus the good experiences. So for me, getting that right, and then secondly, if I'm allowed the second one, the magic one for me would be to have that unified touch point, that unified commerce experience, because it is hard to get every single touch point to talk to every single other touch point. Businesses that can crack that, and then the relevant experiences and everything that we know about the customer can be delivered across every single touch point, whether you're in store, shopping around. I think that's got to be where people are heading. It's going to be a journey to get there. Some people will start getting there earlier than others, and the trailblazers and the technology starters and that. But that for me is going to be where we want to be, and where customer experience and customer relevancy and customer loyalty will really take off.
I think I'm probably going to go for something completely different. So I'm going to speak as a mum with two kids who are getting older and older, and I think back to stuff, their toys, clothing that may have inadvertently ended up in landfill, and I wish that brands can help me see how I extend the life of the products I've bought with them. What do I do with the bikes that they've outgrown? what do I do with the leftover food that's past its sell-by date? Why haven't I got a recipe to hand that will help me create something I can then stick in the freezer? All these little things that I think would have just helped me be a better green citizen. But, this is happening all the time. If brands can just help consumers just with practical ways of like, you've done me the honour buying my product, so I'm going to make sure you're going to look after it well, but also that it lives on, whether that's with another family or, it comes back as something completely different.
Great magic wand ideas. So I've really, really enjoyed this debate. There's so much that kind of resonates with me and comes back to me around, I think, Matt, your point around no brand wants to serve a bad experience. We all have good intentions. That's great. I think, Sharon, you saying 47% of customers are not going to be brand loyal. We need to accept that. There's no point over-indexing on that otherwise. And then if we kind of think about the fact that, look, it's harder and harder to serve the consumer because there's all of these touch points and they're all over the place, and many of them are out of our control. Consumers want more and more. Sharon, your point about help me live a better life, help me recycle, help me upcycle. And brands want to do that, but they're already struggling to focus on the day job. And I think kind of what you both have left me with is the brands that are going to really kind of make it is the ones that are smart and agile and nimble, that can use insights, drive behavior change, use tools like generative AI to drive enhancements to free up capacity so they can really focus on building add-on services, add-on experiences, and differentiate themselves in the market. It's always going to be hard. It's always going to be fun, and we're all going to be a part of it. So that's the best part.
100%.
Absolutely.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.